So I would like to go back and actually retract a buck that I thought was the buck I killed last season in December. I was actually going through some trail cam pictures from some other bucks and just happened to notice that a smaller buck looked more similar to the buck that I killed than the buck that I thought was him that year. And then by comparison, I come to the conclusion that it was definitely him. So we're going to go through that real quick and just kind of relive this little hunt here as this buck's coming through the holler that morning. Man, that was really killer. Right at first light, look up and see that wide rack, knew it was him, you know. But he had gone down from a 10 to an 8, which was really odd to me. I didn't know that yet in this moment, but we had a really harsh winter just before this, and I think that stunted his antler growth because we had put about 12 to 15 inches of snow for almost 2 weeks on the ground, and this was at the tail end of winter anyways, so they were having a hard time finding food. Definitely would have stunted the growth, but yeah, he went from a crazy little 2-year-old to a pretty leveled out 8-pointer. So right now he's about to cross the creek and come right down the trail at 28 yards, and he decides, hey, I'm just going to walk this other way. And that's when your mind starts to hit panic. I thought he was leaving, going down the other end of the holler. He turns and then he crosses the creek in an odd spot. There's no trail, typical buck kind of stuff that they just do. You know, this guy was coming in hot and heavy on a trail mission, and then he turns and just goes around it for absolutely no reason. Goes around one camera, around another, and then turns and comes up the trail that I'm sitting on, and I've never seen a deer go up. At this point, I'm about freaking out because I can't even see him hardly in my scope from the fog and how close he is. And he's not broadside, obviously, so I'm panicking because I feel like I'm about to not get a shot. And then, you know, when you can only see hair, I just hope for the best, and it was just 2-quartered tight and slightly right, stuck him in that back thigh. Heard him crash though, so obviously I was super excited after hearing that. He didn't crash very far from me. This is the buck I thought he was back in 2019. This is the buck he actually was. Who would have thought? But you could tell, like, just look at his tail, look at his back, his color, his stockiness. His frame is just identical. It's just a 6 for whatever reason. He started to grow his little 8 points. He just got little nubs there growing, but barely. But yeah, look at that back. See how his hair's starting to lay down? That's wild. This dude, he always had attitude, but I didn't realize that was him. It's another one of him just walking through that same thing. There's probably 5 or 6 scrapes I put cameras on every year, and he hit almost every one of them. This is me spraying Special Golden Estrus right before I was going in to hunt. Got my climber on my back. You'll see how long it takes for deer to love this stuff. Like they'll find it quick on that scrape, and it doesn't. Me walking through it, that doesn't faze them at all. These 2 little bucks decided to fight literally that night over it forever. I had them on camera. I think 3 or 4 different times it turned on and videoed them. Kind of started out as just sparring, and then at some point somebody got mad. It's about like when Caden and Jaden are messing around when they were kids. They'd start out kind of wrestling. By the end of it, they were throwing real punches. So brotherly love, I guess. But these guys may or may not be brothers. They're about the same size, definitely the same age, 2.5-year-old public land 8-pointers. Yeah, right about here they're getting pretty serious, starting to push each other around, starting to meet a little bit more. One might be frustrated with the other one. They never really went to town, but this is pretty cool to see this right over that scrape that I sprayed and walked right through. All right, here is 2020. This is when he was a 10-pointer. We must have had just the perfect year for his growth. This is the best rack he had that I'm aware of ever. Mostly because I know him. Yeah, he's just peeing, kicking. All that dirt that he's peeing on is going in and out of that scrape. And he takes a wicked dump. He does this like every time he hits a scrape too. He'll do it in this one. This one's just midday, cruising through. Prime rut around here. That arch in his back, that's something that was another trait that you can see from whenever he was 2.5. In a lot of the videos, you can see just a slight arch in his back. And it just looks a little different than other deer. Come back down the hill. At this point, I'm guessing this camera must have had a light because it just stunned him. He's just kind of like, I don't know. Something's off. This is a whole other holler. This is actually probably 500 yards from that one. It's another scrape. He was just walking past. This is another ridge top. Right where they clear cut the top. It's a scrape they've worked every year too. Carried a phenomenal rack that year, I think, for public land. He's a gorgeous deer, really. I kind of wished he still had that 10-point frame, but, you know, with the winter we had and nature, you can't control these things, but I was stoked to get him when I did. So this is whenever I got the only picture that I got this past season. And then that's the next picture I got of him, or next trail cam anything of him, was me dragging him out. Didn't know at the time that I had this one from 2 days prior, middle of the night, in the other holler that I was just talking about. He'd come through for the first time that year. You know, I got cameras all through these hollers, and I never seen him until this one. And then 2 days later, I get him. That's just how it works. He started to move his way to me. Clearly, his home range is narrowing down. It was nowhere near where I was at. Used to, he'd roam all over it, and then he roamed a little less. Now it's just here and there. Now it's not at all, actually. This one I just thought was cool. I wanted to show you guys. This is nature at its finest. This fox finds this little bitty mouse, kills it, starts flopping around, grabs it, throws it in the air, playing. Nature doesn't care. Gobbles it up. It's now dead and gone. Well, yeah, I think. Anyways, just moves on with its business. Whether it ate it or not, it's gone. Nature doesn't care.